This episode is proudly supported by Westholme Australian Wagyu. Whether you're a chef or just love going to restaurants, you know the best ingredients are everything, especially when it comes to beef. Westholme, based in Queensland and the Northern Territory, Australia, is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. They steward 16 million acres of rangeland, guided by the natural ecosystem where cattle graze and forage on native grasses for the first few years of their lives. The result is high-quality Wagyu beef that reflects the terroir of Northern Australia. Westholme believe that when nature leads, flavour follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
I'd like to acknowledge Australia's First Nation people as the traditional custodians of the land, and for this episode in particular, the Jinnabara people. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
It's quite a nervous process when your life savings are on the line. It's just on a ship floating around the ocean and you're just like, oh man, I pray to God that this thing turns up.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Harrington Bjugård Distilling has recently released their dry gin. This is the brainchild of co-founder Ellinor Bjugård and Nick Logan. Hailing from Sweden and the Sunshine Coast, this duo has a shared devotion to crafting extraordinary spirits. Hi Nick, thanks for joining me.
Hi, how are you?
I'm really well. Thank you so much for sending in your gin. I'm such a gin fan and I never think that there's enough on the market, even though there's a lot. Tell me a little bit about where your kind of career path started and how you got to where you are now.
Oh, yeah, of course. So initially, I think like a lot of people, we just started out as gin enthusiasts where we were really, and I think it was when kind of Australian distilling was really taking off with Four Pillars and distilleries like Never Never Distilling kind of pushing the boundaries of the market. So we kind of saw an opportunity that, well, you know, it maybe like the more that we looked into distilling and looked into branding and creating a brand, we kind of saw that, you know, we could actually do it, I guess. So we started there. Initially, we were looking to start the distillery in Sweden, but yeah, that hasn't happened, and we've had to do it in Australia. But that's a story in itself.
So how did you and Ellinor meet?
So we met just on a night out, probably about 10 years ago. We've been together. And kind of got into, I think the first gin that we drank together was like a Hendrix that I picked up at the airport. And then that kind of love for gin just went from there, I think.
Okay, this is all piecing together better for me because when I was reading your website, I was like, I wonder if they're just friends or business partners, but now it all makes sense that you may have wanted to kind of go to Sweden and live there and do that there. Was it that kind of at a COVID time when, you know, that kind of stopped travel, or was it just that Australia was easier for you to settle?
No. So, I mean, one of the reasons behind wanting to do it in Sweden was that it's not a saturated market over there. If you look at Stockholm just by itself, there's only one gin distillery in Stockholm. Can you believe it? You know what I mean? So just not having that saturated market, and they're also really supportive of the businesses that open up there. So initially, obviously, Ellinor, she's got her family there, and we wanted to be close, have a nice support network there as well. But, yeah, I mean, we just wanted to set up a small distillery there, and just bear with me. But then so I put in a residence permit application for us to go over there and do that. But the war in Ukraine happened, I think, just after that, which pushed my application down to the bottom, obviously, because they were taking, I think, around 20,000 refugees per week. So we kind of had to make a decision as to whether to do it in Sweden or whether to wait it out and me try to like go there for 3 months at a time, because that's all I'd be able to do. So we kind of, because it was too much of an unknown, we decided, well, let's do this in Australia. We had our Our still was being fabricated at the time. So we were like, well, what do we do? Do we put our still in storage? Because that was getting made in Germany at the time. And there was a few other things that kind of we had to sort out quickly because we needed all our electrics to be changed if we were going to move it from, European like voltage over to Australian. So yeah, we made the decision that we just pulled the trigger and thought, well, we can't wait any longer. We felt like we'd already waited a long time.
Yeah, that's fair enough. When you said, you started out as gin fans and it's kind of got to this point, where is a point where you go, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to put it all on the line. We're going to put all our savings into this and really go for it. I mean, it must be daunting. And there's so, like you said, there's so many logistics about it all.
Yeah, it was pretty nerve wracking. I think it got to the point where it was like, do I take the risk or do I work for someone who's taken the risk? In a distillery. So we kind of put ourselves in a good financial position by paying down. I think I paid off like 4 times the amount off my mortgage that I needed to for a few years. Just to give us the capital investment so that we could start the distillery without without that money stress to begin with. Obviously, everyone says that when you start a distillery that it ends up being about 3 times more expensive than you expect. And I'd probably agree with that.
Ooh. At least the advice is out there and that you're not completely blindsided.
Yeah, you think it won't be though, but when it comes to, if it's a hobby distillery, you can do them quite cheap. But once you start moving into a commercial scale, everything's more expensive, especially when it comes to things like glassware and your bottles, and you've got minimum order quantities that you need to purchase in order to get those custom bottles.
Mm. And all of that is so important, as we know, because there are so many gins on the market. How is Harrington Bjugård, unique? And tell us a little bit about the gin itself, how it's made and the botanicals used.
Yeah, of course. I think probably our biggest point of difference is the time that we invested into recipe design. I think it took probably about 12 months because we had such a long period between when our due to like bottle supplies essentially. So when we were trying to get our bottles made and custom bottles made, that's just such a long process. I think that's about a 12-month process. So we had that time to be able to invest it into recipe design and essentially just failing consistently. That's all we did for that whole time was we knew what we wanted. We kind of had we had a couple of gins in mind that we really wanted to hold ourselves up against. One of them was Never Never Distilling's Juniper Freak. And another one is Cadenhead Old Raj. So they're 2 of the gins that kind of inspired us, and we wanted to hold ourselves to that level. So, which is like a blessing and a curse, because when you put yourself up against gins that are incredible, you just essentially, we just kept failing. We just kept getting it wrong until we got it right. So, I mean, that might have taken, I think, 250 attempts at trying to make a gin that we were proud of. So it's a labor of love. It's one of those things that we wanted to be proud of. We wanted to come into the market and be proud of our product rather than just like have to get a product into the market. We didn't want to be rushing in it, so. In relation to its flavour profile, so I think Australian gin does it better than anywhere. We use quite bold flavours, I think, in Australia. We kind of really go for it as far as, definitely in the juniper aspect of it. We're a very juniper dense, juniper forward gin. We've got some other botanicals in there. So we've got obviously sage and citrus. We macerate some of our lighter botanicals, more fragile botanicals overnight. They then get put into our pot, and we do a traditional London dry, so it's vapor infused in one shot. So, in relation to the flavour profile, we've got we're just the same as a lot of the others, where it's got, whether it's cinnamon, green cardamom, What else? Star of anise, licorice. So a lot of these that give it like complexity and mouthfeel. Some of those oilier ones there. What else? With our citrus, we only use the peel. We don't use the flesh. we freeze our citrus, and that allows us to obviously just essentially extract that oil, the citrus oil. So yeah, I think that Tim of Never Never Distilling, he once told me that if you can boil tea, you can distill gin. And that is the case, I think. But the hardest thing is like creating complexity and creating balance. They're the really hard things. So it takes some time.
I don't doubt that for a second. I very briefly tried to make my own bitters for some time, and I just couldn't believe. I mean, it's cool because you get to really like get to know the flavors of angelica root and all of these kind of weird tinctures that where you really understand the smells and what they add. But balance was just like, well, beyond me. And I think my partner got sick of having all these bottles of stinky stuff all around the house. But why Macedonian juniper?
Because it's got, so if you look at it from a composition like side of it, so the molecule, so it's got like a high alpha pinene and beta pinene. So that actual species of juniper from Macedonia has high levels of those two parts. So that's essentially the major flavor profile of obviously the juniper berry. So, and it's just really strong in those ones. So that was the reason.
And where do you source the juniper from? Do you go to an importer of that?
Yeah, so we've got an importer who they kind of provide us with most of our botanicals. So we try to get as many local as we can, but with as you're aware, like juniper doesn't natively grow in Australia. I think that there's like one or two distilleries who have started trying to grow their own, but they would only have obviously a small quantity of that. So yeah, we use a supplier here in Australia who provides us with a lot of, whether it's our coriander seed, whether it's our juniper. That's all sustainably sourced and ethically sourced, and they've all got modern day slavery trade agreements as well, which is really important for us that we're not disadvantaging anyone.
Absolutely. I think it's interesting because, like we said, there's so many gins on the market, and I love that because it depends what kind of mood I'm in, what kind of gin I feel like, or what kind of experience. What I noticed with your gin in particular is it felt like it had these really lovely rounded, full-bodied edges, and it kind of, for me, it felt quite bassy, and for that I mean that when I had it on its own and then as part of a gin and tonic, it felt like it wasn't sharp, and it was just really satisfying and bold, but also, like I said, it had these bass tones that I was just like, this is really easy to drink.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm a big fan of Never Never too, so maybe I can kind of see where you're going with that. But tell me a little bit about going to market and kind of how you communicate what you guys are all about and why people should buy your product.
Yeah, this is a difficult question, but I'll try. Well, it's like anything. So the way that we went to market, we kind of, in terms of a brand, like we surrounded ourselves with as many good people as we could. Do you know what I mean? And that all firstly started with our brand designer. He's from the UK and he's incredible. So I've got a little side story there, but I won't go into it yet. But so surrounding yourself with those people so that we were able to be confident in coming to the market. So because we wanted to hit people from kind of, if we were going to come to the market with a premium gin and say it's premium, we need to start with we need to have a premium brand. We need to have premium glassware that's like a custom bottle. We need to have a premium product, and we have to have like premium photography, videography, and social media. So we kind of needed to get everything right before we felt that we were going to be comfortable in coming to market. In terms of having the right people in the team, we've got a guy who's done a lot of consulting for us, Peter Marchant. I think you may know him. He's been great. He's been a sommelier for like 30 years. So we're it's a new thing for me to kind of go into a place and say, hey, this is who we are and this is what we do. He's kind of been able to hold our hands in that aspect for the business to business. So, being able to approach these connections that he's made through the years and just being able to show them, whether being able to tell them our story, being able to show them our product, they love the bottle, and then, being able to display what our product can do in the classic gin drinks, whether that's dry martini, Negroni, or if you want it neater in a gin and tonic. So then they can actually taste the difference and see for themselves kind of, what we are as a brand.
Well, I think that one of the best successes you can have is surrounding yourself with great people, and Macho is one of the best that there is, that's for sure. And when you see him next, you can let him know that it's about time that he jumped on this podcast and had a chat. I think he's been putting it off. But no, it is so important that you have people you can trust and people that have a similar philosophy, I think, as well, because you do have to work with them, you have to trust them, and this is your baby after all.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So it's also been really good having with our designer. So he owns A184, so he's in the UK, Mark McCormick, and he has been like he's kind of almost been like a mentor to us and really held us accountable as far as the it has to be perfect, you know what I mean? Otherwise, he'll just kind of he's quite brutal in that aspect. So he'll kind of we'll be like, I think it's pretty good what we've done here, and he'll just be like, that's not good enough, and we'll just be all right, we'll just let you do it then. So it's good having someone though who keeps us accountable, because if someone's not keeping that standard accountable and being telling us the hard things, well, that's actually not up to standard, or that doesn't align with what we've created here. If you don't have those people who are kind of able to give you those honest truths, I mean, you're just walking into it blind, I feel.
And I suppose also for, our Australian culture, we're serious about gin, but we are quite a relaxed culture. So I think it can be quite easy to fall into, she'll be right, or that's okay, don't stress too much about it in all aspects of business, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So, yeah.
Now, tell me a little bit about, have you got plans for other spirits? I did notice that it kind of talked about, spirits as a plural, and I thought, I wonder if this is keeping it open-ended for later down the track?
Yeah, we've got our first gin that we've released, and like we said, that took about 12 months in relation to recipe design. And for the next one, for our next release, we're only going to be doing gin. That's our passion, that's what we're good at, and that's kind of our way forward. In terms of what gin do we kind of do next? Well, this one's quite a savoury flavour profile, so we'd like to go a sweeter flavour profile for maybe something that's better in gin and tonics. But it's one of those things where it's we will only release that when we're completely happy with it. So there's no time frame on hey, every 4 months, every 3 or 4 months, we want to do a new release. We kind of just want to, when it's ready and not rush the process, just like we didn't rush this process, and we're really proud of how that turned out.
It's a slow burn. See what I did there? Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the still that you use and why it's important in selecting that. Yeah,
so I mean, we had the choice of 2 stills. So there's probably the 2 best still makers in the world are Arno Holstein and Christian Karl Stills. They're both in Germany now. Christian Karl Stills, they're the oldest still maker in Germany, so they're incredible. So it's a complete copper still, hammered finish. It's got a beautiful swan neck. We chose them. We were kind of followed 4 Pillars lead. I think they're the ones who essentially we saw that they were using those stills, and we started investigating it more as to what still we wanted to choose and why. So they're essentially the best you can get, and that's in relation to, from a safety aspect to a distilling aspect, moving away from anything stainless steel. You can get other stainless steel stills like an ice still or Ginio, which are done under pressure, so it's a lower boiling point, where this is more that traditional, I think it's got 4 mil copper that it's made out of. So that traditional method of distillation with that copper still.
It's certainly pretty, isn't it? Like, I mean, it's pretty to look at.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of a work of art. It was kind of nerve-wracking to because I mean it's an enormous kind of outlay, and I remember sitting there, because I had a customs broker involved in relation to getting it transported over to Australia, and I didn't know whether it was going to turn up and it was just like full of empty shoe boxes, and my still was somewhere in Albania, you know what I mean, getting sold, So it's quite a nervous process when your life savings are on the line. It's just on a ship floating around the ocean, and you're just like, oh man, I pray to God that this thing turns up. And it's pretty funny that they're such a good still maker, and their aftercare is like incredible. So as far as the support that they provide after you actually receive the still and it's set up and training on it is out of this world. But one of the funny things that they do is, and everyone I've spoken to has said the same, they just essentially send you like some photographs of how it should be put together. So it came in about maybe 80 pieces or something like that, 80 to 100 pieces. It was just like a massive, and I just had it all laid out. And they just sent like maybe eight photographs of like, this is what it should look like together. But they weren't even the same still. They were all, they might have had a rectification column or whatever it was, So I'm just looking, and they weren't in like high definition photos either. So, there was no itinerary to let me know like, hey, you've actually received all the pieces that you require. So I was just putting this thing together and just hoping for the best, but somehow got it all together. But, yeah.
Gosh, well, we can't say it's a Swedish thing. I mean, I know IKEA has their flat packs, but this is not coming from there, so we can't even say. But was Ellinor any help with that?
Yeah, I mean, we just started with the bits that we could identify, and then kind of went from there, and we're able to like message them and, hey, what where does this go? And that goes on there, and I'll be like, oh my God, like, there was literally no instructions for this thing, nothing.
That's absolutely crazy, but also, I mean, it all worked out, so I suppose it makes sense.
Yeah, I did. I only messed up one with the condenser. There's an inlet and an outlet, and I had them the opposite way around. So I had water going into the outlet, and so I had to get the plumber back to fix that one up. But I only made one mistake out of the whole thing, so that was pretty good.
That's pretty good. I can't imagine that you're picking that up and moving it anytime soon. Once it's set up, it looks like it's in a good spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a lot of the things. Like with distilling, it's one thing to do distilling, but if you own the distillery, you got to get your head around all the the policy procedure, all the requirements, electrical requirements that might have, like we had to get a hazardous area certified because of distillation and electricity, and obviously ethanol is no good. So you kind of have to master everything. You have to master everything with the ATO, with your local laws, Queensland legislation. So it's kind of a bit of you have to figure out everything at once.
Patience, I imagine, is very good in your frame of work. Tell me a bit about the decision on where you sit your alcohol levels at, because there is a bit of talk these days about, releasing spirits at lower alcohol levels, considering what the market is requiring. Where did that conversation go, and how did you settle on 50% ABV?
Yeah, so we kind of wanted to see, I guess we were finding that at 40% ABV, we weren't finding that it had the length. I felt like when you were having your first sip, you'd taste the gin, and then everything after that point, you kind of, you tasted really nothing in relation to the gin. It might have just been the tonic. So we kind of wanted to create a gin that your last sip was as good as your first. We didn't want to go as high as a Navy strength because not everyone's into having a Navy strength. So, which is obviously 58%. So we found that 50%, we wanted it to be close to 50, and 50 we kind of found was that one where we could add a lot more flavor because we weren't blending it down with water, kind of, pushing that flavor out and stretching the flavor out. So that was I mean, it's a bit of a big call because obviously you're in that middle ground, but I think that a lot of people do that lower ABV because they want to get more out of the distillate that they're doing. They want to get more into bottles because it stretches it out a lot more. So I think they do it for obviously a bit more of a financial gain, where we kind of like, well, if we're going to have a premium brand, like I want that flavor to be strong enough in it.
I think it really suits it. Like I said, I think that it feels very polished and deep and flavorful. And I think that the alcohol sits really well in it, which is kind of because I did have a look and think, oh, actually, I probably wouldn't have said it was that high, but there was something about it that I was like, there's just, and again, I was looking like, is it clary sage? What is it that's giving it this real beautiful, round, lovely mouthfeel about it? And I definitely think it's a feature of your product. Nicholas, tell me, what is the most rewarding part of your job?
Well, I don't think that like the reward, I mean, it's taken like a long time to get the reward. You know what I mean? It's kind of been like, like I said earlier, like failing consistently. But, I think now we're actually getting the reward. For me, I mean, we had Peter going out to a lot of restaurants and bars, kind of, introducing them to our product. And he'd come back with this really good, really positive reviews and feedback, whether it was sales, whether it was feedback. They were kind of both as important to us. But when I was actually able, and I kind of like, I believed him, but I didn't know whether he was just like making me feel good a little bit, like just trying to build my confidence up. But I guess being able to see people's like genuine reaction to it, we've had some incredible feedback from people who were maybe a little bit standoffish in their demeanor when we first went there, to when they've then tried it, to them being like where they love it, and like their feedback has been incredible. So that's been like for me, like that's been the most positive thing as far as the payoff for it all.
Yeah, I mean, so much work going into that process, and to sit back now and see it bottled and then see people enjoying it, surely I can see that would be, very rewarding indeed. And I suppose having a drink at the end of the day as well must be pretty nice.
Well, it's funny, because we have had it so, like, I've had it so much that I kind of got to a point where I was like, I don't even know if this is, I was saying to Ellinor or Peter, I was like, I don't even know if this is any good anymore, because you become so numb to your own, if you have it over and over and over, you become so numb to it. Like, you kind of start to question yourself, and like, is this any good? Like, and then, yeah.
And I think that's why I like having a few different gins in my house, because I do find if I just drink the same one all the time, I stop drinking gin and tonics. I'm a bit like, no, I don't feel like that. But if I mix it up, and then I come back to the ones I love, I'm like, oh God, that's good. I forgot how much I like that. So that's why I do think, I'm probably shouldn't say this, but I've got so many gins, and I get through them slowly. But it depends on, maybe on a Wednesday you feel like something a bit more marine, and on a Thursday you want something that's a little bit deeper and richer, and there's room for all of it.
Yeah, completely.
Nicholas, I love to hear a little bit about your palate. If you could only drink 3 drinks for the rest of your life, what would they be and why?
So one of my favorites is a Czech lager. It's called Bernard's. I had it when I was over in Sweden at this bar called Bananas, and they only had they have 2 beers on tap, and but they're both Bernard's. They get it imported directly from the Czech Republic, and it's either filtered or unfiltered, and that's it. And it's the best beer I've ever tasted. So the first one would be Bernard's. It's a Czech lager. Second would be champagne, and I'd love to. I'd love to be able to. I can't actually say the name properly, so let's just say champagne because I'll muck up the pronunciation of the actual brand. But
there's quite a lot out there, don't worry. And after working years as a sommelier, my French is absolutely shocking. So I'd make no judgment, I promise.
I actually looked up the Googled the pronunciation for it, and oh my God, I'm not even going to try to attempt it. So, and the other one I think would probably be Never Never Distilling Juniper Freak. I really enjoy it. I really, really enjoy it. I think it's one of the best spirits in the world. So, yeah, it's really good.
It's quite rare for people to call out a competitor but I think that is really, really brave. And I think that it shows kind of your mindset and always to be reaching for something and appreciating the scene that you got into. You fell in love with gin and then wanted to do it yourself. And so I think that's 3 really excellent drinks. And I think it's really nice to shout them out too because they do a fantastic job. But I've thoroughly enjoyed the gin. I'm really looking forward to hear more about the process and your journey. And I'm really grateful for you spending some time with me.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Stay tuned for more stories from the world of wine and drinks. Listen in every Thursday on your podcast app. Follow us on Instagram at overaglasspod and contact us at overaglass@deepintheweeds.com.au.